My husband cheated with my cousin. Now my family's cutting her off quietly. So here's where it starts. I'm 29 now, and I got married just 6 months ago to a man I genuinely thought was the missing piece of my life. His name's Thomas, 31, thoughtful in ways that sneak up on you. The kind of guy who remembers your coffee order from a year ago or texts your mom happy birthday without needing a reminder. Our wedding wasn't big or extravagant, but it was ours. White chairs on a rented lawn, my grandfather walking me down the aisle, while my grandmother cried into the same handkerchief she'd carried at her own wedding 50 years ago. I felt surrounded, not just by love, but by the kind of stability that doesn't always make noise but is always there. My grandparents raised me more than anyone else. When my parents divorced and then slowly disappeared into their own chaos, it was Grandma and Grandpa who showed up with packed lunches, rides to choir practice, tuition help, and a promise they never stopped repeating. When you graduate, we'll help you with a home. Not a mansion, but a roof that's yours. I graduated 3 years ago. Nothing fancy, just a master's in education, but I made it. Got a decent job at a high school, started saving, and last year, when I got engaged, they reminded me of that promise. When the time is right, we'll help you settle, Grandpa said over his morning paper, like it was just the weather report. We moved into a small condo outside of town. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, just enough space to feel like we were building something. And they came with us for the walkthrough. Grandpa in his old fishing hat, checking the insulation like he knew exactly what he was looking for. Grandma asking about which wall we'd hang our wedding photo on. They put down part of the down payment without blinking. Called it a wedding gift with long legs. And then there was my cousin, Elise. She's 28 now, a year younger than me, but we were practically raised like sisters. We used to share clothes, stories, secrets. Every birthday, every holiday, every Sunday night dinner with too much roast and too little space on the couch. Elise was there. She was there when I first met Thomas. She was there when we got engaged, helped pick out my dress, even gave a little speech at our reception about how my cousin deserves the world, and now she's got it. She'd always been around. Even after we moved into the condo, she'd drop by on weekends, sometimes just to borrow a book, sometimes to hang out and binge old sitcoms. She joked once about how the place felt like home version 2.0, and I laughed because it did feel like that. Warm. Lived in. Ours. Looking back now, there were small things I ignored. Little moments. But at the time, everything still felt good. Grounded. Safe. I had a job I liked, a husband I adored, a family that showed up, and the keys to a condo we called home. Everything felt like it was finally coming together. I had no idea yet what was waiting behind it. It started with a password I already knew. Not because I was snooping, but because we used the same one for our shared Netflix account, and he wasn't exactly creative with logins. One night, Thomas had left his phone charging on the kitchen counter while he showered, and I went to grab it, just to check the time. But the screen lit up with a message before I even touched it. One of those preview bubbles you wish you hadn't read. My name wasn't in it, but Elise's was. It was short, just a sentence. Something about last weekend still being on her mind. My stomach dropped. There was a way people talk to each other when they're hiding something, and it was all over that line. I waited until he was asleep, then sat in the living room with that phone in my lap, hands shaking, heart pounding, whispering to myself that I was wrong, that there had to be some explanation. There wasn't. The messages went back for weeks. Photos. Inside jokes I didn't understand. Mentions of days he said he was working late or running errands. Phrases that made my chest hurt. The worst one, a picture of the two of them together. Her head on his shoulder, his hand resting low on her waist. They weren't drunk. They weren't posing. They looked comfortable, familiar, intimate in a way that stripped the air right out of my lungs. I felt like the floor disappeared. I kept scrolling, kept reading, kept finding more. At one point, I had to run to the bathroom because I thought I was going to throw up. I sat on the cold tile, gripping the edge of the sink, hearing nothing but the sound of my own breath breaking in half. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was who it was with. Elise wasn't some random name. She was my cousin, my childhood sleepover buddy, the girl who shared a bathroom with me every Christmas Eve, the one who cried at my wedding because she said she'd never seen me so happy. I had trusted her in ways I couldn't even explain. I had let her into my life, into my home, into my marriage, and she had smiled in my face while sneaking behind my back. I sat in that room with the door closed and just stared at the messages until the screen went dim. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I couldn't even cry. It was like every emotion in my body went quiet all at once. Numb. Hollow. And that's the worst part, I think. When the people who swore they loved you manage to rip something out of you so deep that even the pain feels like silence. I didn't go to them right away. It took me 3 days to find the words, and even then, I wasn't sure if I could say them out loud without falling apart. But the silence in that condo felt like it was crushing me, and I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal while the foundation of my life was rotting beneath me. So I called my grandmother and asked if I could come by. Her voice, still soft and warm like it always had been, told me to come whenever I needed. She said they'd be waiting. They were both on the porch when I arrived, sitting in the same chairs they'd had for years, the ones with faded cushions and chipped arms. My grandfather stood as soon as I got out of the car, and before I could say a single word, my grandmother had already pulled me into her arms. I held on a little longer than I meant to. I think she could feel something was wrong. We went inside. I sat at the table I'd eaten at hundreds of times, the one where I'd done homework and peeled potatoes and opened Christmas cards. I didn't touch the tea, she said in front of me. I just looked at both of them and said, "Something's happened." I told them everything. Not dramatically, not to shock, just honestly. I told them how I'd found the messages, how long it had been going on, how it wasn't just my husband, it was Elise, my cousin, the girl they had welcomed into their home as often as they had welcomed me. My grandmother's hand went to her chest halfway through. My grandfather's face tightened, and he didn't say anything at first. When I finished, when there was nothing left to explain or soften or hold back, he looked at me across the table with an expression I'd only ever seen once before, when my dad walked out for good. She knew what she was doing, he said, low and cold. And he did too. My grandmother was quieter, but her anger was there, sitting just beneath the surface of her shock. "After everything we've done for her," she said, shaking her head. "All those years we helped with her school, the loans, the rent, and this is how she thanks us." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. My grandfather stood up and walked into the back room. When he returned, he was holding a file folder, the kind he used for anything related to the house or the family. He sat down, flipped it open, and took out a document. I didn't recognize it at first, but then I saw Elise's name near the top. "I was planning to help her with a down payment this year," he said. She didn't know it yet, but it was already set aside. My grandmother reached over and took his hand. Not anymore. They didn't yell. They didn't curse. They didn't need to. Their disappointment was louder than rage. It cut deeper, too, because they weren't just upset for me. They were hurt, for trusting her, for loving her, for believing she was someone who would never cross that line. That night, before I left, my grandfather walked me out to my car. He put a hand on my shoulder and said, "You don't worry about that girl. Or him. We're with you. Always have been." It wasn't revenge in the loud, messy way some people talk about, but it was justice. Quiet. Sharp. Permanent. It happened quietly. There wasn't some big announcement or confrontation. My grandparents didn't send out a family-wide message or gather everyone in the living room like some kind of soap opera. They just shifted things. The way they always handled serious matters. Calmly, decisively, with zero drama and no room for negotiation. The money that had been sitting in that folder, originally set aside for Elise's first home, was transferred to my name. My grandfather walked me through the paperwork like it was just another step in the plan, like it had always been meant for me. He didn't gloat. He didn't say, "She doesn't deserve it," even though he could have. He just said, "We'd rather see it go somewhere it will be respected." They added a little more than what they'd given me for the condo. I didn't ask for it. I never even brought it up. But they told me they wanted to make sure I had options, that if I ever wanted to move out, start over somewhere else, or invest in something new, I wouldn't have to ask for anyone's help. They called it insurance against chaos, and it stuck with me. Word spread through the family eventually. It always does. No one said anything directly to me, but I noticed the shift in how people treated Elise. The tone when her name came up. The way aunts and uncles stopped including her in group messages. How she wasn't invited to my cousin Jenna's baby shower. How her mom, my aunt, stopped bringing her up completely at Sunday dinners, like she'd been quietly erased without any official statement. I heard she tried to defend herself, claimed it just happened, that feelings are complicated, that she never meant to hurt anyone. But no one was really listening by then. Her reputation was hollow now, echoing with the sound of doors quietly shutting behind her. My grandmother didn't speak ill of her, not once. But she did start referring to me as the granddaughter we're proud of. That was enough. The part that hurt her the most, I think, wasn't even the financial blow. It was the silence. The way no one rushed to comfort her when the family pulled back. The way she started showing up less and less, until one day, she just didn't anymore. She lost something she thought she'd always have. Not because someone took it from her, but because she threw it away with both hands and never expected to pay the price. And when it finally came, there was no one left to help her carry the weight of it. Filing for divorce was easier than I expected. Not emotionally, but logistically. I had already moved most of his things into boxes by the time the paperwork was drawn up. The day after I found out about the affair, I called a lawyer recommended by one of my coworkers and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, took a few notes, and said calmly, "We can move on this fast." That was all I needed to hear. Thomas didn't fight it. He didn't try to win me back, didn't beg or deny anything. He signed the initial paperwork with the same detachment he used to reserve for paying bills or picking up groceries. I think he knew, not just that I was done, but that he'd broken something he'd never be able to patch together. We didn't have children. The condo was in my name, bought partially with my grandparents' help, so he had no legal claim. He moved out without a word. The silence was louder than any argument could have been. My grandparents stood by me every step of the way. My grandfather insisted on coming with me to the courthouse the day I submitted the final paperwork, even though he just sat in the car waiting. He didn't say much afterward, just handed me a small envelope with a note inside that read, "You are not broken. You are just beginning again." I kept that note in my bedside drawer. The house felt different once he was gone. Lighter, somehow. I replaced the sheets, rearranged the furniture, took down every photo that had his face in it. I filled the shelves with plants I didn't know how to care for and opened the windows even when it was cold. I started waking up earlier, not because I had to, but because the mornings felt like mine again. I went back to reading at night, something I hadn't done in months. The quiet stopped feeling heavy. It started feeling like freedom. People kept asking if I was okay, and I told them yes, even when I wasn't, until one day I realized I actually meant it. I was okay. Not perfect, not healed, but okay in the way that meant I could stand on my own 2 feet without bracing for the next blow. The chapter with him was closed. Neatly, cleanly, officially. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking backward. I was just breathing forward. Looking back now, it wasn't just the betrayal that changed me. It was everything that came after, the unraveling, the silence, the clarity. It was standing in the middle of a life I thought I'd built with the right person, only to realize it had been held together by assumptions and good intentions. What saved me wasn't revenge or anger. It wasn't even the divorce papers. It was my family, my grandparents, who showed up not just with money or support, but with unwavering belief that I was worth more than what had been done to me. They didn't need to shout or punish to make their point. They just moved their love, their loyalty, and their legacy in my direction without asking for anything in return. That's what held me together on the nights I couldn't sleep and the mornings I didn't want to get out of bed. It wasn't just that they had my back. It was that they reminded me who I was before someone tried to break that down. And in the end, justice didn't come in the form of some dramatic courtroom scene or a viral confrontation. It came in quiet choices, closed doors, and withheld invitations. It came in the way the people who mattered made it clear that character still counts, and that betrayal doesn't go unnoticed, even if it takes time to surface. I didn't get back what I lost, but I got something better. I got to keep my dignity. I got to walk away without guilt. I got to rebuild my life with people who never made me question my worth. And I got to see what it means when justice, even the quiet kind, finally lands where it should.